The last execution by beheading carried out by the Roman Senate took place on a sunny morning in May, with a recorded delay of 9 days before anyone showed up to carry it out. I stand outside the Basilica of Constantine, surrounded by the cacophony of haggling merchants and the smell of freshly baked bread wafting from the nearby ovens. The sun beats down upon my skin, radiating heat off the cobblestone streets that stretch towards the Marmara Sea. As I walk through the bustling market, the worn stone beneath my feet tells a story of countless footsteps before mine. What if this delay was not an aberration, but rather the rule? Would the Roman Senate have been a place where time stood still, awaiting some forgotten protocol to be fulfilled? What would it mean for justice and punishment in a city that seemed so distant from its Western counterpart? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. The sound of the water clock, ticking away with deliberate slowness, provides a calming background hum as I continue on my way through the city. The rhythm lulls me into a contemplative state, inviting me to reflect on this strange moment in Constantinople's history. The scent of baking bread wafts through the narrow streets of Constantinople, carrying with it the promise of sustenance and comfort. You breathe deeply, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin as you navigate the crowded alleys. The smell is not just a pleasant aroma, but a daily ritual that has become an integral part of life in this great city. As you make your way through the throngs of people, the sounds of vendors hawking their wares and merchants calling out prices create a cacophony of noise that assaults your senses. You weave past stalls selling fresh produce, the vibrant colors of the fruits and vegetables on display a stark contrast to the drab stone buildings that seem to loom over you from every direction. You notice an elderly woman haggling with a vendor over the price of a few bunches of scallions. Her face is lined with wrinkles, etched by years of working in the sun and struggling to make ends meet. She looks up at you as she catches your eye, her gaze piercing but kind, and you wonder if she's noticed that one of the vendor's onions has gone bad. The woman's name is Sophia, and she's a familiar sight on these streets. You've seen her before, perhaps buying bread from the nearby bakery or haggling with vendors over prices. She's been doing this for years, long enough to have developed a keen eye for spotting rotten produce and an even keener sense of smell that can detect when a batch of freshly baked bread has gone stale. As you continue on your way, the sounds of the city grow louder, but so do the smells. You catch whiffs of roasting meats from the nearby butcher's shop, mingling with the scent of fresh bread and the faint tang of olives from the nearby market stalls. The air is thick with odors, a sensory overload that's both overwhelming and comforting. You turn down a side alleyway, dodging between a group of burly men carrying large bundles of firewood and a pair of young children playing tag in the narrow passageway. The sound of their laughter echoes off the stone walls as they chase each other through the crowded streets, their footsteps pounding out a lively rhythm on the cobblestones. The alleyway opens up into a small square where you find yourself face to face with one of Constantinople's most iconic landmarks, the Hagia Sophia. Its towering dome seems almost impossibly high, its intricate stone carvings glowing in the sunlight like tiny jewels scattered across the surface of the building. You pause for a moment, taking in the majesty of the structure before you continue on your way. As you move through the square, you notice that the vendors are starting to pack up their stalls, calling out final prices and haggling with customers over last-minute deals. The sun beats down on your skin as you make your way back into the narrow alleys, searching for a spot of shade where you can sit and rest for a moment. You come across an elderly man sitting against a stone wall, his eyes closed in contentment as he soaks up the warmth of the sun on his face. His name is Theodoros, and he's been watching over this corner of the city for years. He looks like he might have spent some time at sea. There's something about him that suggests saltwater and windswept hair. But now he spends most of his days simply sitting in the sun, people watching and enjoying the peace. As you sit down next to him, he opens one eye lazily and regards you with a gentle smile. You notice that he's holding a small wooden bowl filled with what looks like a mixture of olives, onions, and something else, possibly breadcrumbs. He offers it to you without speaking, inviting you to join him in his snack. You take the bowl from him, inhaling the pungent aroma of the olives as he nods towards a nearby fountain. The sound of running water is like music to your ears, providing a soothing background hum that contrasts nicely with the cacophony of noise just a short distance away. As you eat and drink alongside Theodoros, you start to notice some of the finer details about life in Constantinople, not just the big landmarks or the bustling markets, but the small stuff. The way the light filters through the stone walls, casting intricate patterns on the ground. The smell of baking bread that seems to be omnipresent even at this late hour. You think back over your own day, trying to remember all the little things you've experienced so far. The sound of vendors calling out prices in the morning, the feel of the sun beating down on your skin as you walked through the city. And now this, sitting with an elderly man, eating a snack from a wooden bowl while listening to the soothing sound of running water. As you sit there, something starts to dawn on you. Constantinople is not just a great city, it's also a place where time seems to stand still. Where life moves at its own pace and people live in harmony with each other. Even if that harmony comes from long habit rather than any deep understanding of one another. Theodoros gets up slowly, his joints creaking with age as he stretches and smiles down at you. You realize it's getting late, the sun is starting to set over the rooftops, casting a warm orange glow over everything in its path. It's time for him to find some dinner, but first, he offers you the bowl of olives once more, inviting you to join him on his next destination, the bakery at the edge of town. The one that sells bread so fresh it'll give you a headache for days. You hesitate for a moment, feeling the familiar rumble in your stomach as he nods towards the sun-drenched streets ahead. You know what's waiting out there, not just food or drink, but also the city itself, all its sights and sounds, smells and textures. The air clings to your skin like a damp shroud, heavy with the scent of jasmine and stale bread wafting from the nearby market stalls. You breathe it in deeply, feeling the moisture seep into your lungs as you navigate the narrow alleys of Constantinople's Imperial Palace district. The year is 532 AD, and the city is still reeling from the recent riots that ravaged its core. But amidst the rubble and reconstruction, life goes on. Merchants hawk their wares in the streets, intricately woven silks, polished bronze vases, and fresh spices that fill the air with tantalizing aromas. You thread your way through the crowds, dodging merchants and artisans as you make your way to the palace's administrative wing. Your destination is a small, dimly lit scriptorium tucked away on a corner of the complex. The scribes who work here are known for their meticulous attention to detail and strict adherence to imperial protocol. As you approach the entrance, a young scribe named Basil greets you with a nod. His dark eyes flicker towards yours before returning to his task, carefully illuminating an intricate border on a parchment scroll using a delicate brush dipped in lapis lazuli ink. The air is thick with the scent of fresh parchment and the faint tang of dried ink. Basil's work requires great care, for every line and curve must be executed flawlessly. Any mistakes would not only waste imperial resources, but also risk earning him reprimand from his superiors. You watch as he pauses to inspect a particularly intricate knot on the border, before adding another delicate stroke with his brush. The sound of scratching quills on parchment fills the air, accompanied by the occasional murmur of conversation among the scribes as they work. Some exchange quiet words about their tasks or offer sympathetic nods when one of their colleagues struggles with an especially stubborn line. To your left, a senior scribe named Sophia hunches over her desk, carefully inscribing the contents of a diplomatic letter on high-quality vellum using a rare, specially imported reed pen. Her brow furrows as she delicately shapes each character, her focus so intense that she barely registers your presence. Basil glances up at you with a hint of curiosity, but remains focused on his work. You sense the weight of responsibility settling upon him, to ensure every document is accurate and complete before it reaches the imperial court. He dips his brush in ink once more and continues working, lost in the intricate dance of curves and lines. The room is filled with rows of wooden desks, each one occupied by a scribe intent on their task. Some work alone, others collaborate to ensure that even the smallest details are accounted for. In this quiet corner of the palace, time itself appears to slow as if trapped between two worlds. The world outside, where chaos reigns and empires rise and fall, and the world within these walls, where precision and accuracy hold sway. Sophia looks up from her work and meets your gaze with a fleeting smile before returning to her task. You notice that she's working on a particularly delicate script, one of those rare occasions when even the most skilled scribes falter under its demands. Her fingers move deftly, but you sense the tension within her as she tackles each curve. The air in the room thickens with concentration as Basil carefully adds another stroke to his border design. His brow furrows slightly, and he pauses for a moment before resuming work with renewed focus. The sounds of scratching quills on parchment grow louder, filling the space between your chest and shoulders like a soothing melody. Time seems to stretch within this tiny scriptorium, not because anything extraordinary is happening, but perhaps because here in these quiet corners life has discovered its own rhythm, steady, deliberate, and unfaltering. You breathe it in deeply along with the sense of parchment and ink, feeling yourself settle into this world where precision holds court. The scribes around you seem lost within their tasks, focused to the point that even the sounds from outside grow fainter as your senses become immersed within this tiny universe of quills, ink, and precision. You watch Basil add another delicate line to his border design. Sophia's fingers move with increased care on her parchment scroll. Outside, in a world beyond these walls, history is still unfolding, Empires rise and fall, battles are fought, and the tides of politics shift like sand dunes underfoot. But here, within this small, dimly lit room filled with scribes at work, time stretches out like an unending scroll, each line meticulously drawn, every curve lovingly crafted. You feel a gentle breeze from the open window ruffle your sleeve as you continue to watch Basil add the final touches to his design. The sound of scratching quills on parchment deepens into a steady heartbeat that seems almost soothing, a reminder that even amidst the turmoil and upheaval outside these walls, life within this tiny scriptorium continues unabated. In the distance, the call to prayer from nearby mosques carries over the rooftops, a haunting melody that weaves in and out of the quills scratching on parchment. Basil's hands pause for an instant as he listens, lost in thought, before returning his focus to the delicate border design on his parchment scroll. As Basil's quill danced across the parchment once more, the soft scratching sound seemed to blend with the distant call to prayer, creating an otherworldly harmony that wrapped itself around his thoughts like a gentle shroud. He was lost in the intricate patterns of the design, his mind wandering through the labyrinthine streets and alleys of Constantinople as he pondered the latest batch of imperial decrees. His brother Theodore poked his head into the room, his eyes scanning the space with a mixture of curiosity and concern etched on his face. "Basil, have you given any more thought to our conversation last night?" Theodore asked, his voice low and measured as he nodded towards the parchment in Basil's hands. "Conversation. Last night." Basil's mind stumbled over the words like a mule struggling with an unfamiliar load. What had they discussed? And what did it have to do with he couldn't quite recall. The details were shrouded, much like the city itself, veiled from view by layers of fog and mystery. "Conversation," Basil repeated, his voice hesitant as he set down his quill. "I'm not sure I remember." Theodore's expression softened, a hint of understanding creeping into his eyes. He ambled over to the small wooden table where they often worked together on their projects, running a gentle hand along its surface before turning back to Basil. "We spoke about your indiscretion," Theodore said carefully, choosing each word as if plucking a delicate flower from the garden of forbidden knowledge. "The Scribes Guild is not pleased with your revelations." Basil felt his face heat up like embers on a winter night, those moments when he'd let his passion for language and art get ahead of him, where words had spilled out in reckless abandon as if fueled by an infernal spirit. He recalled the shock on Theodore's face that evening, the warning glint in their father's eyes. "Forgive me," Basil said now, bowing his head as he rubbed a hand over his temples, trying to massage away the recollections and clear his thoughts like so much mist from a mirror. "I fear I've been preoccupied." Theodore placed a reassuring hand on Basil's shoulder, speaking softly in a tone that sent waves of calm through him. "We all have our burdens, brother," Theodore said, his voice carrying over the soft murmur of the distant call to prayer now joined by other sounds, footsteps echoing from outside their lodgings, and muffled voices carrying on the wind. "We must be careful what we reveal in these times." Basil looked up at his brother with a mixture of gratitude and frustration. Frustration because he couldn't quite recall the details of that fateful conversation. Gratitude for Theodore's unwavering support. "We should return to our work," Basil said finally, though it felt like an admission rather than a statement, Acknowledging that there were things they dared not speak aloud in these times, secrets locked away within their hearts and the pages of parchment where he poured out his soul. With a shared understanding passing between them like a silent signal, they returned to their workstations. The scratching sound resumed as Basil's quill danced across the paper once more, weaving its own tale into the fabric of Constantinople's narrative. In this city of contrasts, where East and West converged in an intricate dance of faiths and traditions, it was easy for one scribe to lose himself among the whispers of history. Yet amidst the echoes of ancient knowledge and forgotten lore, Basil found solace in his craft, a way to capture the essence of Constantinople's eternal mystery. As dusk approached, casting long shadows across their lodgings, Basil finally set down his quill once more. He looked up at Theodore with an expression that spoke volumes. They would keep secrets hidden behind veils of parchment and silence, but in those moments when duty allowed them to breathe freely, like the wind rustling through a city's ancient stones, they'd remember their bond as brothers and the rebellious spirit that pulsed beneath Constantinople's seemingly tranquil surface. And so, with an unspoken understanding passing between them like a whispered promise, Basil stood up from his workstation. He stretched out his arms towards the evening sky, letting in the warm breeze carrying scents of jasmine and citrus, the perfume of secrets shared among friends on summer nights when stars shone bright over Constantinople. "Come," Basil said softly to Theodore as they walked through their lodging's door into a world alive with stories yet untold. "Let's take a walk along the Golden Horn." The sound of laughter echoed from somewhere in the alleys, mingling with night songs carried on the wind, whispers that spoke directly to their hearts, and the parchment scrolls upon which Basil inscribed his rebellious tales. Together they walked into the quiet darkness, where shadows seemed to come alive as Constantinople's mysteries whispered their secrets one by one. The scent of baking bread wafts through the air, carrying with it the promise of a warm meal to come. It's an aroma that never fails to stir something in the belly, and you can't help but feel your stomach growl with anticipation as you make your way through the winding streets of Constantinople. You walk alongside Theodora, Justinian's wife, who glides effortlessly across the cobblestones like a goddess born from the very stones themselves. Her presence is always accompanied by a gentle hum of curiosity and speculation. What secrets lies behind that painted smile? You've heard whispers about her alleged connections to dark magic, but for now, she seems as harmless as a spring breeze on a warm afternoon. The streets are eerily quiet tonight, save for the occasional clinking of pots and pans from the kitchens below. You notice Theodora's attendants have left her side temporarily, leaving you alone with the Imperial wife in this deserted alleyway. She begins to stroll ahead, beckoning you with an elegant hand as if drawing a lost lamb towards its flock. As you follow her, your footsteps echo off the buildings, reminding you of the stark difference between these narrow passageways and the grandeur of the palace that lies beyond them. Theodora pauses occasionally to glance over her shoulder, as if checking for something lurking in the shadows, perhaps a stray guard or an unwary merchant trying to get close to her person. You find yourself at the entrance of a small courtyard tucked away from prying eyes. Inside, a warm glow emanates from within, beckoning you towards its source like a moth drawn to flame. Theodora pushes open the door and steps into this cozy sanctuary without hesitation. It's clear she knows what lies within. You hesitate for a moment before following her across the threshold, your eyes adjusting slowly to the dim lighting within. Inside, you're enveloped by an aroma that defies explanation. Part spice market, part kitchen fire with just a hint of something else, something. Earthy. It's difficult to pin down exactly what it is. A soft murmur rises from within as Theodora begins to chat with the occupants in hushed tones. You recognize one or two figures by their features and garb. There's Constantine the baker, resplendent in his white apron, Anastasia, that eccentric herbalist who always seems to be muttering incantations under her breath, though tonight she appears subdued. The room itself is small but cozy, with a fire crackling away on one side. A low table sits at its center, bearing an assortment of foodstuffs. Warm bread loaves next to steaming jugs of soup, an array of what looks like roasted meats and vegetables arranged in neat piles upon platters. You're immediately drawn towards the scent emanating from a nearby tray, a tantalizing spread of honey-glazed pastries. Theodora notices your gaze and offers you one with a smile, gesturing for you to follow her over to an empty seat by the fire. As you sit down beside her, she leans in close. "Tonight we gather here," she whispers in secret, "to celebrate." Not quite yet, she pauses for dramatic effect before adding, "The date on that stone is correct." Your mind wanders, what does it mean? That mysterious stone from the palace courtyard still lingers in your thoughts. What if its inscription actually refers to a different emperor altogether? But Theodora's words seem tinged with an air of mystery, leaving you wondering whether this celebration concerns something grand or merely mundane. As conversation flows around you, snippets about trade routes and shipments from the far-off east, your thoughts begin to meander. Have any among them heard tell of those fabled spices that bring their users unparalleled wisdom? Or perhaps there's a more earthy explanation. Maybe Anastasia has finally perfected her secret sauce for roasted meats. Your seat creaks as you shift against it, settling in further beside Theodora. Her hand brushes yours momentarily before she withdraws hers to continue speaking with Constantine about recipes, seemingly. You listen attentively but find your attention drifting once more, caught up in the gentle rhythms of conversation and the warm comfort emanating from this small gathering. The fire crackles on as night wears into evening. Time becomes a fluid concept within these four walls. Candles flicker to life around you now that the darkness has deepened, casting eerie shadows upon the walls which dance like phantoms in the dying light of day. You ponder how it feels to be trapped between two worlds, one where intrigue and gossip swirl through palace corridors, another where mystery hangs heavy over this quiet courtyard, a world full of whispers about magic and hidden truths. In these soft, muted tones you begin to sense something else lurking just beyond the edge of awareness. For now, though, it's Theodora who holds center stage. Her laughter floats across the room as she shares some jest with Anastasia. Their conversation ebbs and flows like a gentle stream. You observe from your seat by the fire, trying not to think about that enigmatic stone or its possible implications for these people gathered here tonight. Time seems suspended within this small sanctuary, far removed from the grand events of empires rising and falling outside these walls. Tonight is a moment of peace in an otherwise turbulent world. You can almost sense it settling into Theodora's bones like an autumnal chill, one that may eventually thaw but for now remains etched on her features. In this soft-lit room where shadows flicker across the walls, conversation meanders and pauses occasionally as if drawn to a distant melody. Your heart beats in time with its cadence, though it is hard not to ponder what mysteries lie just beyond this secret gathering, waiting patiently like specters on the periphery of understanding. You continue listening to Theodora's stories about trade routes and merchant ventures, her eyes sparkling occasionally as she recounts some tale or other. Her presence envelops you in a sense of calm. Tonight at least, it seems, there are no urgent decrees from above, no pressing matters that demand immediate attention. Here among friends or perhaps acquaintances, Theodora's painted smile takes on an endearing quality like the faintest glint of moonlight reflected off rippling waters. Eventually, conversation slows and dies away as they settle in for a warm meal together. Anastasia has brought out steaming dishes from her kitchen. Tonight, at least, there are no secrets weighing heavily upon Theodora's shoulders. Tonight is simply another night among friends, just like countless others before it. The taste of those honey-glazed pastries lingers on your tongue as you eat in silence alongside the imperial wife and these close associates. For a brief moment, amidst all the intrigue that swirls around Constantinople, there exists only this small courtyard. Its warmth seeps into your bones, reminding you that sometimes it's not what lies beyond those palace walls, but rather who, or perhaps what, resides within them. Night wears on as shadows deepen outside and candles flicker low. In this dimly lit sanctuary, where mystery hangs heavy over the city like an autumnal mist, Theodora leans in close once more, though her voice now whispers secrets of its own into your ear. And so you sit by the dying embers, wrapped in a sense of peace that has nothing to do with any grand strategy or imperial decree. Tonight is merely another evening among friends. Tonight, there's only this small gathering and their stories, woven from threads as fragile as those whispered secrets shared between Anastasia and Theodora themselves. Time stretches out like the soft glow emanating from within this courtyard, a gentle, comforting presence that holds you suspended in its orbit. As night wears on and the fire dwindles to nothing more than smoldering embers, your thoughts begin to meander along paths both familiar and unknown, echoing through corridors of memory as Constantinople's secrets whisper their enigmatic tales one by one into an all but sleeping world. As you drift deeper into slumber, visions begin to emerge like wisps of fog on a chilly morning. You find yourself standing amidst the grandeur of Hagia Sophia's nave, its majestic dome soaring above you as if heaven itself had come down to earth. The air is thick with incense and the whispers of countless prayers, each one weaving together into an ever-unfolding tapestry. Your gaze falls upon a figure draped in regal finery, Justinian's wife Theodora, her painted smile seeming almost otherworldly as she moves through the crowds with measured steps. Her eyes sparkle like polished onyx, and for an instant you sense that behind their enigmatic glint lies secrets only whispers can reveal. Your thoughts begin to wander back in time, tracing a path from the vibrant streets of Constantinople's imperial capital to the hushed corridors of power where Theodora once held sway. As co-emperor with Justinian, she wielded influence unseen and unspoken, her counsel shaping policy even as it stirred whispers of scandal. The night air thickens, heavy with secrets kept hidden behind gilded doors and stone walls that seemed impenetrable to mortal minds. Theodora's smile takes on an eerie quality, like a painted mask hiding the truth from prying eyes. In those moments when the masks slip, ever so briefly, you glimpse glints of fire in her gaze. You are drawn into memories long past, the time she rose above palace intrigue and politics to champion the cause of Christian monasticism, her passionate defense of the Monophysite sect before the patriarchs, stirring both reverence and revulsion within the imperial court. With each recollection, Theodora's face seems less a painted mask and more an enigmatic map etched with hidden pathways that only night could reveal. Your journey through Constantinople's shadows leads you to forgotten corners of its once thriving commerce, bustling markets filled with exotic goods from far-off lands, silk fabrics woven in the imperial looms, spices carried by merchants who traversed seas and mountains on grueling trade routes. Merchants whispered secrets among themselves over cups of steaming coffee as night air clung heavy around them. Your path converges with that of a lone sailor, perhaps one whose ship had docked at the Golden Horn under cover of darkness. He navigates crowded streets in search of a hidden harbor where ships could sail unseen, their cargo destined for ports unknown to imperial eyes. His footsteps echo through empty corridors as he seeks out connections with those willing to defy Justinian's decrees. Through him, you glimpse an invisible city that thrives beneath the surface, its residents bound by secrets and allegiances forged in darkness, where night shadows were currency just as valuable as gold or silver coins. These secret keepers weave a tapestry so intricate it threatens to snuff out all light within Constantinople's walls. Your vision expands further still. The streets give way to hidden courtyards, gardens sheltered from prying eyes by high walls and ornate screens that conceal the lives of those who dwell behind them. There, veiled women move unseen among carefully tended flowers, their presence hinted at only through faint whispers carried on scented breezes. Each courtyard seems a self-contained world within the city's labyrinthine heart, its own code of honor dictating what truths could be shared with outsiders, and which must remain hidden forever behind masks or screens. Even as you wander these secret spaces, Theodora appears beside you once more, her painted smile now tinged with an unspoken warning. Secrets kept are just one heartbeat away from betrayal. Your journey through Constantinople's shadows takes a final turn into regions where memory itself becomes tenuous and subject to interpretation, realms of dreams that seep into waking life, ever-changing landscapes born from the accumulated whispers of countless nights. Theodora's presence fades like mist at dawn as you lose yourself within this shifting expanse. And yet, even in darkness, there lingers a hint of imperial power still palpable through Constantinople's streets, Justinian and his wife weaving their intricate web of intrigue that spans centuries to come. The scent of freshly baked bread wafts through the streets, enticing passers-by to follow its savory aroma to a nearby bakery. The sun has barely risen over Constantinople's rooftops, casting long shadows across the cobblestone roads. You are walking down one such street, your stomach growling with hunger as you make your way towards the city's central market. As you navigate through the crowded streets, the sounds of merchants calling out their daily specials and the clanging of pots from nearby kitchens create a cacophony that is both familiar and overwhelming. The smell of bread gives way to the pungent aroma of freshly caught fish, being sold at a stall near the city's famous hippodrome. You quicken your pace, dodging pedestrians and market stalls as you make your way towards the bakery. Inside, the warm glow of the oven beckons like a welcoming fire on a cold winter night. The baker, a stout woman with flour dusting her cheeks, greets you with a warm smile as she hands over a still warm loaf. "Ah, good morning to you, my friend," she says, her voice husky from years of shouting out prices and haggling with customers. Freshly baked bread straight from the oven. Only a few coins for this lovely loaf. You hand over a small pouch containing 3 copper coins, just enough to cover the cost, and take your freshly baked treat in exchange. The crust is still warm, releasing a gentle steam that dances across your face as you break into its soft interior. As you enjoy the bread's comforting warmth, you can't help but think about the day ahead. You have an appointment with a local apothecary to pick up some medicine for your aunt, who has been suffering from a lingering cough. The sun beats down on the city streets as you make your way towards the apothecary's shop, one of many nestled between markets and merchants' stalls along the city's main thoroughfares. You push open the door to the apothecary's shop, releasing a bell above it that tinks out a cheerful welcome. Inside, rows upon rows of dusty jars filled with various concoctions line the shelves, each labeled in elegant script on tiny parchment tags tied around their necks like miniature flags. The air inside is thick with the scent of herbs and spices, some familiar, others completely alien to your nose. The apothecary, a wispy old man named Euphemius, greets you warmly from behind his workbench, where he's busy mixing a complex potion that sends tiny tendrils of mist wafting up into the air. He gestures for you to approach as he carefully pours a few grains of powder onto the scale balanced above a nearby jar. "Ah, good morning. I have just what your aunt needs, some special blend to ease her cough. Only 3 piastres, and it's worth every copper piece," Euphemius says with a knowing smile as he wraps up the small pouch containing the medicine in paper tied around its neck like a tiny package. You hand over 4 coins instead of 3, and take your leave with the precious medicine securely stowed away. As you emerge into the bright sunlight once more, the city's sounds envelop you again, merchants hawking their wares, children laughing as they chase each other through narrow alleys, and above it all, the distant sound of imperial drums calling out a procession to the palace. You make your way towards home, dodging market stalls selling everything from fresh produce to intricately woven tapestries. Your aunt will be relieved when she takes her medicine. Perhaps it'll bring some much-needed respite from her constant coughing fits. You can almost smell the improvement already, a hint of honey and rose petals carried on the breeze as you near home. As you walk, the sounds around you blend together into a soothing background hum, punctuated by occasional bursts of laughter or raised voices in dispute over prices. The air is thick with activity, yet somehow it's all contained within this one specific moment. Just another day unfolding itself like a rich tapestry across Constantinople's cobblestone streets. The thought brings to mind the imperial court that rules from atop the city's 7 hills, their intrigues and schemes weaving an invisible web of power that seems both oppressive and, at times, mesmerizing. But for now, you're just a simple citizen going about your day, carrying out errands as the sun climbs steadily towards its noonday peak. You quicken your pace once more, eager to get home before the heat becomes unbearable. The thought of sitting down in the shade with a cold drink on hand is especially appealing, Perhaps later today, you can even persuade one of the palace guards to join you for an afternoon's gossip over wine and bread. As you quickened your pace, the sounds of the city grew louder, vendors hawking their wares, children laughing and chasing each other through the narrow alleys, and the occasional braying of a donkey or bleating of sheep carried on the breeze. You navigated the winding streets with ease, having lived in Constantinople for nigh on 5 years now. It was a city like no other where East met West, and old traditions blended seamlessly with new ideas. You turned onto a street lined with fruit stalls, their vibrant colors and enticing aromas drawing you in like a magnet. The smell of fresh dates wafted through the air, making your stomach growl with hunger. You had promised yourself that today would be a day of indulgence, a break from the usual routine of work and responsibility. You stopped at one of the stalls, run by an old friend named Sophia. She was known for her exceptional produce, sourced from all corners of the empire. As you browsed through the colorful array on display, your eyes landed on three peculiar-looking fruits that caught your attention. Sophia noticed where you were staring and smiled knowingly. Ah, those. The pomegranate's cousin, the Greek strawberry. Not for eating fresh, I'm afraid, she warned, her voice low and conspiratorial. The juice will stain your teeth forevermore. Or so they say. Your curiosity was piqued. You asked Sophia to tell you more about these enigmatic fruits. She leaned in closer, a mischievous glint in her eye. Legend has it that the Greek strawberry's seeds hold a secret, one that would make even the bravest warrior tremble with fear. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They say its juice contains the essence of the forest goddess Artemis herself. You laughed at Sophia's theatrics, but your interest was genuine. You had always been fascinated by local myths and legends. You purchased 3 Greek strawberries from her stall, one each in different colors, red, yellow, and green. As you continued on to the palace, the sun beating down relentlessly upon your shoulders, you couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement at the prospect of trying these mysterious fruits. Perhaps Sophia's tales were mere exaggerations, but there was something alluring about the idea of tasting something as fabled as the Greek strawberry. Upon arriving at the palace gates, you exchanged pleasantries with one of the guards, a burly man named Alexios who had become an unlikely friend over time. He raised an eyebrow when he saw the fruits in your hand but said nothing, merely nodding for you to pass through. You made your way to the shade of a nearby courtyard, where you spotted an empty bench beneath a willow tree. The cool breeze rustling its leaves provided welcome respite from the heat. You took out one of the Greek strawberries and bit into it, expecting something akin to a sweet strawberry taste. Instead, the juice exploded in your mouth like firework sparks, tart yet somehow both familiar and strange. You sat for a moment, trying to process what you had just experienced. It was as if the flavors danced on your tongue, each note subtly blending with others to create an almost otherworldly sensation. The red fruit's taste lingered longest, rich, earthy undertones like damp soil after spring rains before giving way to its yellow counterpart. You couldn't help but think of Sophia's stories now. This must be the essence of Artemis herself. You wondered if there was any truth to these ancient myths, or if they were merely products of an overactive imagination. Yet something within you felt awakened by this taste experience, a curiosity that yearned for more. As the yellow flavor faded from your palate, its place taken by the green fruit's subtle bitterness, you heard footsteps approaching. Alexios had found time to join you after all. He plopped down beside you on the bench, raising his cup in greeting as he sipped from it contentedly. "Ah, I see you've discovered the fruits of our local gods," he said with a chuckle, nodding toward the Greek strawberry skins scattered around your feet. "Be careful what you taste next, for some say those who indulge too deeply risk losing themselves within their own memories." Sophia's stories again. It seemed that even in this great metropolis, ancient whispers continued to weave an enchanted fabric of urban legend and myth. And as you watched Alexios take another sip from his cup, a thought occurred. Perhaps it was not just the taste that made your teeth ache, but also the secrets hidden within these fabled fruits. The scent of roasting meats wafted through the narrow alleys, mingling with the sweet aroma of freshly baked bread and the acrid tang of smoke from the nearby blacksmith's forge. You followed the enticing smells to a small food stall tucked away near the city walls, its wooden sign creaking in the gentle morning breeze. Kyriako's Kitchen. The proprietor, an elderly man with a bushy white beard and a twinkle in his eye, greeted you with a warm smile as he expertly flipped a sizzling skewer of lamb over an open flame. As you watched Kyriakos work his culinary magic, the sound of clanging pots and pans from the nearby kitchen grew louder, punctuated by the occasional shout or laugh from one of the other vendors. The air was thick with the scent of roasting meats, making your stomach growl with anticipation. You couldn't help but wonder what secrets lay hidden within these simple pleasures. Perhaps it wasn't just the food that brought people together, but also the stories and whispers shared over steaming plates. You ordered a small portion of Kyriakos' famous keftedes. A dish you'd heard was essentially fried meatballs made from leftover bits, along with a crusty loaf of bread and a wedge of creamy feta cheese. As the vendor wrapped your purchases in a worn linen cloth, you couldn't help but notice the assortment of curious trinkets displayed on his stall, colorful ceramic tiles depicting scenes of everyday life, delicate glass vials filled with shimmering oils or fragrant herbs, and intricately carved wooden spoons adorned with tiny metal charms. Kyriakos handed you your purchase, his calloused hands deftly exchanging it for a few coins. You took a seat on the nearby stone bench, unwrapping the cloth to reveal your meal within. The aroma of sizzling meatballs wafted up, mingling with the scent of fresh bread and cheese. As you broke into the loaf, the soft crust gave way beneath your fingers, releasing a whisper of warm air that tickled your nose. With each successive bite, the world seemed to slow down, the din of vendors' shouts grew muffled, the clanging pots receded into the distance, and all that remained was the gentle crackle of the fire, the soft crunch of fresh bread beneath your teeth, and the satisfying sizzle of Kyriakos' famous keftedes. For a moment, you forgot about the city's grandeur, its imposing walls, bustling markets, and labyrinthine streets, focusing instead on this small, fleeting pleasure. As you finished your meal, you leaned back against the stone wall, feeling the cool surface seep into your shoulders like a gentle breeze on a summer day. The sun was rising over the rooftops now, casting long shadows across the alleys as it climbed higher in the sky. A group of young boys passed by, their laughter carrying through the air as they chased after each other with sticks and shouted taunts. Kyriakos' stall grew quiet once more, save for the occasional sizzle from his cooking fire or a hushed conversation between two regular customers. As you sat there, lost in thought, a figure emerged from the shadows, an elderly woman, her face etched with deep lines and a look of perpetual concern, carrying a worn wooden bucket slung over one arm. She paused beside Kyriako's stall, eyeing your empty plate before speaking softly to the vendor. Her words were barely audible above the gentle hum of conversation from other stalls nearby. Kyriakos, have you seen my grandson? He's been missing for hours now. I fear something terrible may have happened. The old man's expression softened as he patted her hand reassuringly. We'll find him, Mother, Kyriakos said gently. Don't worry, we've dealt with such things before. He's probably just exploring the city walls or trying to impress his friends by climbing the minarets. As you watched this exchange unfold, a memory from your own childhood resurfaced, one of playing in an overgrown orchard near your village home, chasing after butterflies and watching as they landed on colorful blooms. You recalled how each time a particularly stubborn bloom refused to yield its petals to a hungry butterfly, the creature would hover nearby for hours, eventually disappearing into the nearby woods. You followed this chain of thought back to Kyriako's stall, noticing that an old wooden calendar hung from one corner of his awning. It depicted various scenes of everyday life in Constantinople. Bustling markets filled with merchants hawking their wares, a procession of dignitaries on horseback as they rode through the city gates, and even a scene depicting the construction of a new church, its walls rising high into the air like skeletal fingers. Your gaze drifted to Kyriakos himself, who was now carefully sorting various spices in small wooden containers, each one labeled with intricate etchings that spelled out their contents: sumac, thyme, and cinnamon. As you watched him work, a thought occurred to you. Perhaps these seemingly mundane details held more significance than initially met the eye. Maybe even the most trivial seeming customs or routines hid deeper meanings, waiting to be unraveled. You finished your thoughts as Kyriakos looked up from his task, meeting your gaze with an inquiring expression. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. All that existed was this simple food stall, its proprietor, and you. As our eyes met, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was as if Kyriakos had pierced through to the very core of me, sensing something I wasn't even aware of myself. The air around us seemed to vibrate with an unspoken understanding, like two musicians tuning their instruments in perfect harmony. The stall owner's gaze lingered on mine for a moment longer than necessary before he nodded curtly and returned his attention to the sizzling meat. I watched as he expertly turned the skewers, the smell of charred lamb filling my nostrils and reminding me that even in this fleeting instant of connection with Kyriakos, life went on. You wandered back to your place at the counter, lost in thought once more. The sounds of the city, merchants hawking their wares, children's laughter echoing off the stone buildings, and the soft clanging of pots from a nearby kitchen all blended together into a rich tapestry that was both familiar and foreign. The sun beat down upon your skin, its warmth seeping through the fabric of your clothes. You felt its gentle pressure as you leaned against the counter, trying to grasp at the threads of conversation you'd had with Kyriakos earlier in the day. He'd mentioned something about a great fire that had swept through Constantinople's old city years ago. Your mind drifted back to those words as memories long buried began to resurface. You remembered hearing tales from your grandmother, stories of flames engulfing entire neighborhoods, people scrambling for their lives as they fled the inferno. In the fire, you murmured aloud, more to yourself than anyone else in earshot. The proprietor glanced up at you with a questioning look but said nothing, his eyes returning to the meat sizzling on the grill. As I stood there lost in thought, memories of that long-ago conflagration began to seep into my consciousness like water through parched earth. It was as if the city itself was awakening from a deep slumber, revealing secrets and stories hidden beneath its ancient stones for centuries. The fire had ravaged not just buildings but an entire way of life, erasing centuries-old traditions, customs that went back to the earliest days of the Roman Empire's eastern capital. You recalled whispers about churches being reduced to ashes, frescoes lost forever, and artifacts plundered or destroyed. Kyriakos looked up from his task once more, this time with a knowing glint in his eye as if he'd read your thoughts. You think back on those times, he said quietly, not asking but stating it as fact. His words hung suspended between us like the threads of a spider's web, delicate and complex, each strand woven from countless interactions, shared experiences, and stories passed down through generations. I see people today trying to rebuild what was lost in that fire, you replied softly. They speak of renewal and progress, but sometimes I wonder, do they remember? Kyriakos nodded thoughtfully as he wrapped a few strips of meat in papyrus paper for an unseen customer's order. His movements were economical yet deliberate, each gesture imbued with a quiet confidence born from years spent mastering his craft. I think, you ventured on, sensing that the proprietor was willing to engage in conversation more deeply than ever before, that even when they rebuild what's been lost or create something new, there are always elements of the old lingering beneath the surface. The words spilled out with a sense of urgency now, as if you'd stumbled upon an unspoken truth. You glanced around at the cityscape unfolding beyond the stall, churches under construction alongside mosques and synagogues, merchants hawking their wares amidst vendors selling ancient artifacts, all these disparate threads weaving together into a rich tapestry that was both vibrant with life and fragile in its very existence. Kyriakos watched you, his eyes serious now but not judgmental. In fact, there seemed to be an unspoken understanding, as if he too saw the city's deeper currents, understood the hidden meanings beneath trivial-seeming customs or routines waiting to be unraveled. And then, just like that, a silence fell between us once more, heavy with anticipation and possibility. The warm scent of sandalwood wafts through the air, carried on a gentle breeze that stirs the leaves of the nearby papyrus plants. You breathe it in deeply, feeling your senses settle into the quiet afternoon routine of life in Constantinople. The sound of hammering echoes from the nearby blacksmith's shop, but it's muffled by the thick stone walls and doesn't intrude on your tranquility. As you sit cross-legged on a woven reed mat, you notice the soft rustle of the fabric beneath you, the gentle give as your weight shifts. Your fingers absently play with the intricate patterns of the rug's design, tracing the paths of gold thread that weave through the blue and crimson hues like tiny rivers. To your left, the sound of chanting drifts from the nearby monastery, a low murmur that ebbs and flows in time with the gentle lapping of the Bosphorus against its shore. You listen for a moment, letting the soothing rhythms calm any lingering tension in your shoulders. Your gaze wanders to the adjacent alleyway, where two women are engaged in animated conversation as they sort fresh vegetables from their baskets. One of them, you recognize her by the peculiar mole on her left cheekbone, raises an eyebrow and calls out a greeting, waving a handful of bright green beans aloft like a banner. The gesture is familiar, she's made it countless times before, but something about this particular afternoon makes it feel almost anticipatory. You nod in response, returning to the intricacies of your own concerns as you focus on unraveling the mystery of the missing apothecary's notes. Your eyes rove across the scattered pages spread out before you, a mixture of scribbled lists and illegible scrawls that defy deciphering. The scratchy ink seems to mock you, taunting with its secrets. The scent of sandalwood lingers in your nostrils as you delve into this puzzle, lost in thought as you attempt to unravel the threads of forgotten memories. A breeze stirs outside, rustling the nearby papyrus plants and sending a stray leaf drifting onto the pages beside you. The sound is so faint it's almost imperceptible, like a whispered secret. Your gaze drifts outwards, across the alleyway where the two women continue their lively discussion. They're laughing now, their words tumbling over one another in good-natured debate as they sort through the vegetables with practiced ease. The air is filled with the pungent aromas of fresh herbs and ripening fruit, a symphony of scents that's almost overwhelming. Your attention snaps back to your task at hand, deciphering the apothecary's notes, which seem to grow increasingly cryptic by the minute. A faint scratch on one page catches your eye, what appears to be an incomplete symbol or perhaps just a careless smudge. You ponder its significance as you carefully turn the pages, trying not to smudge any of the delicate ink. The afternoon light waxes and wanes in fits and starts, casting dappled shadows across the walls that seem to shift with every passing moment. Shadows dance on the alleyway pavement outside, darker silhouettes of men hurrying through their daily routines amidst a background tapestry of blue-gray stone buildings. Your hands move deftly over the pages as you attempt to unravel the tangled threads, your thoughts drifting between the cryptic notes and the banner-filled conversation beyond the walls. It's almost distracting, this constant ebb and flow of sounds from the outside world, a background hum that provides an odd sense of comfort. You're so engrossed in the puzzle at hand that you don't notice as your stomach begins to rumble, not loudly enough for anyone else to hear, but enough for your own internal awareness. You recall having eaten only bread and cheese this morning. Perhaps it's time for a midday snack. The prospect of finding something edible amidst the chaotic bustle outside is daunting. The rustling sound from nearby papyrus plants grows louder as the breeze stirs up once more, causing another stray leaf to float over your pages. You watch idly as it settles between two books on an adjacent shelf, its delicate form nestled among the leather-bound volumes like a tiny ghost. Your mind starts wandering again, following that particular thread of thought through narrow alleys and side streets until you find yourself contemplating life's little inconveniences. Damp bread, lukewarm tea, clogged drains. A minor rebellion against the mundane world, one not easily swayed by promises of grand adventures or sweeping vistas. Time seems to flow with a similar meandering quality as your thoughts do, slowly, almost imperceptibly, like water seeping through parched soil on a hot summer day. You notice how shadows creep across the walls at an alarming rate when you're lost in thought. Before long, the very air itself appears different. As if sensing that it's time to refocus your attention, the women from the alleyway reappear beside you, this time with baskets slung over their arms and curious glances cast your way. The mole-marked woman leans down close, whispering something in a tone that implies they've discovered a long-lost treasure among the vegetable stalls. You nod along politely as she speaks, all while keeping one eye on her companion, who's rummaging through her basket with an air of practiced familiarity, much like a seasoned forager searching for hidden delights beneath the surface. Their conversation flows around you in a soothing melody that harmonizes perfectly with the gentle lapping of waves outside. It's here, suspended between these familiar rhythms and the intricate puzzles on your lap, where time itself becomes almost irrelevant, as if hours have passed without any noticeable change within this particular world. A peculiar stillness settles over everything. Conversations pause mid-sentence. People freeze in their tracks as they glance about uncertainly. Even you seem reluctant to move from this quiet sanctuary. Yet the silence doesn't last for long, broken as it is by a faint cry echoing through the narrow streets, an insistent voice calling out with growing urgency. It's followed closely by footsteps pounding the cobblestones outside your window, heavy and purposeful, yet not quite frantic enough to warrant actual alarm. Your gaze returns to the scattered pages of notes before you, still puzzling over their secrets like a tantalizing enigma that refuses resolution, much as life itself often does. A faint breeze stirs once more through papyrus leaves outside. Shadows deepen across walls and stone pavement alike. Time moves on in its quiet, inexorable way. You remain suspended within this world of subtle sounds and scents, caught between the mundane rhythms of daily life and an obscure mystery waiting patiently for your attention, like a small, intricate puzzle nestled among countless others in the labyrinthine recesses of memory. As you linger within this threshold between worlds, a gentle breeze stirs the air, carrying with it whispers from the past. Your mind begins to wander, searching for threads to weave into a coherent narrative. The scent of rose petals and myrrh wafts through your senses, transporting you back to the apothecary's shop on the cobblestone streets of Constantinople. Your eyes, now accustomed to the dim light, begin to discern the details within the shop. Shelves lined with glass jars filled with powders, liquids, and dried herbs stretch towards the ceiling, their labels bearing cryptic symbols that speak of long-forgotten remedies. A small wooden counter at the far end of the room is strewn with papers, quills, and inkwells, as if the apothecary had hastily departed in search of something. Your gaze falls upon a leather-bound journal nestled between two stacks of dusty tomes on an adjacent shelf. The cover bears the apothecary's crest, a stylized letter M adorned with crescent moons and stars which seems almost familiar yet remains elusive. You lift the book from its resting place, feeling an unexpected tingle as your fingers brush against the embossed letters. The journal falls open to reveal pages filled with notes in elegant script, cryptic entries detailing experiments with rare herbs, recipes for concoctions that defy explanation, and sketches of mystical symbols etched into wood. Your mind reels at the sheer scope of knowledge contained within these yellowed pages. Where had this apothecary been when writing such esoteric treatises? In hidden libraries deep in monasteries or ancient temples forgotten by time. A sudden jolt stirs you from your reverie, as if an unseen hand has nudged your thoughts along a new path. You recall the apothecary's reputation for being meticulous with his notes, so precise that even his apprentices marveled at their clarity. Oh, and yet, where are these very same records? had he not stored them within this shop. A wave of unease washes over you as the realization sets in. Something has been lost, forgotten amidst the chaos of everyday life in Constantinople's crowded streets and marketplaces. The apothecary's notes hold secrets that could revolutionize understanding of medicine or perhaps even transcend into other realms. You begin to rummage through shelves, searching for any hint of what might have become of these precious journals. Underneath a nearby shelf lies a compartment hidden behind an intricately carved wooden panel. Your fingers dance across the intricate pattern as you press a small release mechanism, and the panel creaks open to reveal a narrow passageway. A faint scent of sandalwood wafts from within the passage, beckoning you deeper into its mysterious depths. The air thickens with anticipation. Every nerve in your body seems attuned to an unseen music that resonates through this labyrinthine world. You feel drawn towards some hidden destination, as if following a thread unwinding from the apothecary's final moments of consciousness. With each step down the narrow passageway, shadows grow longer and darker, like ink spreading across parchment. The ground beneath your feet begins to slope downward, leading you into an almost subterranean realm hidden beneath the shop itself. Walls made of rough-hewn stone loom around you as if guarding ancient secrets. The air thickens further. With each passing moment, whispers grow louder, voices from forgotten eras speaking in hushed tones about a mystic order that once roamed these same streets under cover of night. These enigmatic figures allegedly possessed knowledge distilled from the very fabric of existence, an uncharted realm hidden beneath Constantinople's sprawling cityscape. You press onward, following this strange thread as it tangles through forgotten histories and hidden paths. Every step leads you closer to unraveling a mystery shrouded in silken veils, one that could forever alter your perception of the intricate web-binding past and present together within these enchanted streets. The scent of roasting spices wafts through the air, carrying with it the promise of a warm meal to come. You stand in front of the small kitchen shop, nestled between two larger buildings on a bustling street in Constantinople's ancient heart. The sign above the door reads Ahmed Spices in elegant script, and the smell emanating from within is unmistakable, a heady blend of cumin, coriander, and cardamom that makes your stomach growl with anticipation. As you push open the door, the bell above it rings out, announcing your arrival to Ahmed himself. He looks up from his workbench, where he's busy measuring out quantities of cinnamon into small clay jars. His eyes crinkle at the corners as he smiles in greeting, a warm, welcoming smile that puts even the most skeptical customer at ease. You've come to visit Ahmed for one reason, his secret ingredient. Rumor has it that this mysterious addition is what sets his dishes apart from those of every other chef in Constantinople. Some say it's a pinch of rare Sumatran pepper. Others claim it's a dash of saffron, carefully harvested under the light of a full moon. But Ahmed himself remains tight-lipped on the subject, at least for now. As you enter the shop, your eyes adjust to the dim interior. The air is thick with the scent of spices and cooking fat, and you can hear the soft murmur of conversation from next door, one of the many restaurants in this crowded street where Ahmed's wares are no doubt on display. The light filtering through the windows casts long shadows across the shop floor, making it seem even more cramped than it is. You push aside a stack of baskets filled with fresh herbs and make your way to the counter, where Ahmed awaits you with a friendly smile. "You're welcome." "Coming out of the chill," he says, gesturing toward a small wooden stool tucked into one corner of the shop. "I have just what you need, though perhaps not quite what you expect." You take the stool and sit down, running your hand over the intricate patterns etched into its surface. Ahmed busies himself gathering a selection of spices from his shelves. Tiny glass jars filled with mustard seeds, rowan berries, and other ingredients whose names you don't recognize. "I'll let you in on a little secret," he says, winking as he measures out a small quantity of one particularly pungent spice. "But first, would you care for some tea?" "I have just brewed a fresh pot. It's a special blend from the islands off the coast." You accept his offer and watch as Ahmed expertly pours two steaming cups from an ornate ceramic teapot perched on a nearby stool. The aroma wafting up is rich and complex, with hints of bergamot and lemon. As you sip your tea, which tastes faintly sweet and intensely refreshing, Ahmed begins to regale you with stories of his time spent traveling through the spice trade routes that crisscross the ancient world. Egypt's Nile Delta, India's western coast, even the distant islands of Sri Lanka. His tales are infused with an infectious enthusiasm for the exotic and unknown. The sun outside has begun its slow journey toward the horizon now, a gradual process in this city where time is measured by shadows rather than hours or minutes. As you listen to Ahmed speak, your mind begins to wander back to those early days when Constantinople was still a fledgling metropolis, when trade routes were being forged and cultures blended together in ways both surprising and inevitable. The scent of roasting spices has given way to something else entirely, the rich smell of cardamom wafting from Ahmed's latest experiment on his workbench. It makes your stomach growl with anticipation as you realize that, for all its ancient history, this city remains a place where mystery still lurks around every corner, in each carefully measured pinch of spice, in every whisper of gossip carried through the crowded streets. You glance up at Ahmed and catch him winking, though whether it's to signal something or simply because he can't help himself is impossible to say. The look is so brief that you're left wondering if you imagined it entirely. Just another one of the tiny, fleeting moments in this city where reality blurs with rumor and history, becomes as slippery as a fish on dry land. The weight of Ahmed's gaze settles back onto your face, now serious for once, rather than playful. "I think I've told enough stories," he says quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's time to share the secret ingredient." Your heart beats just a fraction faster as you lean forward on the stool, eager to hear what Ahmed has in store next. But then something catches your attention, a faint scratching noise coming from outside, an odd, insistent sound that grates against the peaceful atmosphere inside the shop like fingernails on chalkboard. You frown and glance toward the door, wondering if it's simply a stray animal or perhaps someone trying to get past Ahmed's defenses. The scratching grows louder, more deliberate this time, as whoever or whatever is making the noise begins to knock insistently against the wooden paneling outside. It takes you by surprise, this sudden interruption from something that seems entirely out of place within these cramped, intimate surroundings. Your mind stumbles over itself in trying to reconcile what's happening now with all those stories Ahmed shared earlier, each one a testament to the hidden corners and unexplored alleys of Constantinople, where mystery waits patiently around every corner. The scratching stops just as abruptly as it began, replaced by an almost complete silence that hangs like a heavy blanket over everything. You're left staring at Ahmed in confusion, unsure whether he's noticed anything out of place or if this sudden interruption has somehow gone unnoticed entirely. As you stand there frozen, Ahmed slowly raises his head off the table, a faint crease on his forehead as if he's sensing something amiss. His gaze drifts around the room, taking in the same familiar sights that have become second nature to him: the faded curtains, the worn wooden floorboards, and the array of pots and pans hanging from hooks like sentinels guarding their culinary secrets. For a few heart-stopping moments, he seems just as perplexed as you are. Then, without warning, his expression changes, and a sly smile spreads across his face like a dark ribbon unfolding itself. He sets down his spoon, the metal clinking softly on the plate, and leans back in his chair, steepling his fingers together. "You've noticed it too," he says, his voice low and even, as if stating an obvious fact rather than asking a question. The scratchings have stopped. His eyes glint with amusement, but there's something else lurking beneath the surface, a faint unease that makes you wonder what exactly is going on. You take a step forward, your mind racing to catch up with the sudden shift in atmosphere. Ahmed's words hang suspended between them like a challenge or an invitation, and for a moment neither of you speaks. The silence stretches out, taking on a life of its own as it fills every corner of the room. Your eyes flicker towards the hearth where a small fire crackles and spits, casting shadows that dance upon the walls. It's an ordinary scene, or so it would seem to anyone else, but you've been living in this house long enough to know better. There are always undercurrents here, hidden forces at work beneath the surface of everyday life. "You think someone's watching us?" Ahmed asks finally, his voice still low and smooth, but with a hint of something like trepidation. You shake your head, unsure how to respond. "I don't know," you admit, feeling a twinge of unease that has nothing to do with the scratchings or whatever is causing them. It's as if Ahmed's words have awakened some hidden part of yourself, stirring up memories and half-remembered conversations from years past. The room seems to grow smaller around you both, the air thickening into an almost palpable presence that presses in on your skin. You can feel Ahmed's eyes upon you, a weighty gaze that is both intense and probing. For a moment, it feels like he's searching for something hidden within you, some secret ingredient that will unlock the mysteries of this place. But then his expression changes once more, and the smile returns, this time laced with a note of mischief. "Come," he says, pushing back from the table and rising to his feet. "Let's see if we can uncover what's been stirring beneath our noses." He leads you into the kitchen, moving through the narrow doorway like a man walking into familiar territory. The room is cramped but well organized, rows of shelves stacked with jars, baskets overflowing with fresh produce, and pots hanging from hooks as before. As he busies himself rummaging through one cupboard after another, his movements become more rapid and decisive. You stand by the sink, watching him in growing fascination. This isn't just about finding out what's been scratching at walls. It feels like Ahmed is on a mission to uncover something far more fundamental. "Look here," he mutters, holding up a small container filled with an unidentifiable powder. "Remember how our grandmother used to make that special spice for the kebabs?" You nod, recalling the stories of family traditions and ancient recipes passed down through generations. Ahmed's eyes light up as if remembering something long forgotten. I think I know what it is, he says, a hint of excitement creeping into his voice. Follow me. He leads you to a small door hidden behind an ornate tapestry in one corner of the kitchen. The handle turns with a faint creaking noise, revealing a narrow stairway that plunges down into darkness. Where does this go, you ask, your heart beginning to beat faster as the air around you thickens once more. Ahmed's smile is back, wider and more enigmatic than before. Down into our family's secrets, he says, his voice barely above a whisper as if sharing something sacred. The scent of old leather and parchment wafts through the air, carrying with it the whispers of generations past. It clings to your skin like a damp shroud, weighing you down as you sit in the dimly lit room. The flickering candle casts eerie shadows on the walls, making it seem as though the very darkness itself is listening in. Your grandfather's eyes lock onto yours, his gaze piercing through the gloom. He nods ever so slightly and begins to speak in that hushed tone you've grown accustomed to. Down into our family's secrets, he says again, this time with a hint of resolve etched on his face. The air is heavy with anticipation as you wait for him to continue. Your heart beats out a slow rhythm, each pulse mirroring the creaking of the wooden floorboards beneath your feet. The silence stretches between them like a canvas waiting for brushstrokes, expectant yet eerily still. Your grandfather's hands rest on his lap, fingers interlaced in a way that suggests he's trying to keep himself from fidgeting. A small, nervous habit of yours is echoed in the gentle twitch of his left eyebrow. The lines etched into his face are a testament to years spent navigating the complexities of family and politics. He takes a deep breath before speaking again, his voice barely above a whisper as he begins to weave tales from threads so fine they're almost invisible. You know how I mentioned those boys who were sent away at dawn on that certain morning. The words hang suspended in the air like autumn leaves waiting for their inevitable fall. You nod, your eyes locked onto his, and he seems to expect something more, a question perhaps, or a comment. But you're lost in the quiet, your mind struggling to catch up with the slow unwinding of the narrative. As you ponder this mystery, the room itself begins to take on a life of its own. Shadows dance across the walls like dark spirits seeking escape from the warmth emanating from the hearth. The creaks and groans of the old wooden beams seem to grow louder in sympathy with your grandfather's hesitant tone. It's as though the very fabric of time is shifting, allowing you a glimpse into moments long past. Your fingers drum an impatient rhythm on the armrest, seeking comfort in the solidity of wood beneath your touch. The smooth surface is reassuring, a constant amidst the swirling waters of memory and speculation. Your grandfather notices this, his eyes flicking to where your hand lies before returning to yours with a hint of understanding etched between them. I'll tell you everything, he promises softly, but first, the dates. You need to understand when they lived. He reaches for a parchment from the nearby table, carefully smoothing out wrinkles that have accumulated over time like fine dust on an old bookshelf. The yellowed paper crackles beneath his fingers as he begins to read aloud. Year of our Lord 1020. It was during the reign of Basil II, the Bulgar slayer himself. A young emperor with a taste for military prowess and a disdain for petty politics, which is why, he pauses mid-sentence, glancing at you with an air of caution before clearing his throat. The flickering candle casts eerie shadows on the walls, as if darkness itself was growing restless. The creaking floorboards seem to echo this unease, a series of slow groans and sighs that feel almost like a shared breath in the stillness. Your grandfather's eyes never leave yours, but you sense his hesitation is not merely about sharing secrets. It's also about navigating the labyrinthine paths of family loyalty. Those boys, he says softly, their story began on a morning much like any other, dawn breaking over Constantinople with a promise that was soon to be broken. As the tale begins its slow unspooling, you're enveloped in an atmosphere heavy with history. It's not just the stories your grandfather tells, but also the silences between them that transport you into another time. Your heart beats out a rhythm different from before, each pulse now mirroring not only the creaks of the wooden floorboards beneath your feet, but also the hesitant steps being led by those who came before. The room itself becomes a vessel for memories, echoing whispers with every breath, until it feels as though you're sitting among shadows that have taken on lives of their own. You're no longer merely listening to tales. You're part of them, walking alongside boys sent away at dawn into the unknown, your footsteps carrying echoes through time. And when he finally begins to speak again, his voice is a river flowing smoothly over rocks long forgotten in its course, each word building upon the last as if carried by currents that have been running for centuries. They were from noble families, he continues softly, sent away with promises of protection and learning. But what happened on that certain morning? His eyes lock onto yours once more, this time with a hint of curiosity rather than resolution. The silence stretches between them like the canvas still waiting to be painted, expectant, yet eerily still as you lean forward in anticipation, ready for whatever comes next. The room's shadows seem to deepen, echoing your grandfather's words and drawing you further into a world that is at once both familiar and strange. You're no longer merely listening, you've become part of the fabric, with every breath carrying echoes through time. The scent of old leather and parchment clings to your skin like a damp shroud, weighing down the moment as it hangs suspended in air, waiting for its inevitable fall into memory. Your grandfather's eyes never leave yours, but in their depths you sense not just family loyalty, but also a deep understanding that some secrets are meant to be shared across generations. As he pauses once more, letting his words hang like autumn leaves on the wind, the room itself seems to hold its breath, anticipating what comes next in this tale of life in Constantinople. The shadows dance and deepen as if darkness itself is growing restless, but your grandfather's voice remains steady, guiding you through a world that was once real yet now feels almost mythical. And so it begins again, the slow unwinding of threads into stories that weave their way deep into memory, like autumn leaves carried by wind into places long forgotten. Your heart beats out its rhythm in time with every word spoken, each pulse echoing not just the creaks beneath your feet, but also the hesitant steps taken by those who came before. In this quiet room filled with shadows and stories, you're no longer merely listening. You've become part of a world that is both familiar and strange, walking alongside boys sent away at dawn into an unknown future. As you walk alongside the boys, their footsteps echoing off the crumbling stones that line the narrow streets, you can't help but feel a sense of disorientation. The city seems to be shifting around you, like the very fabric of reality is being rearranged with every step. You've been walking for what feels like hours, yet the sky remains stubbornly gray and unchanging. The boys themselves seem oblivious to your presence, their eyes cast downward as they trudge through the dust that coats everything in a fine layer of grime. They're dressed in simple tunics, belted at the waist with leather straps, and carry small satchels slung over one shoulder. You catch glimpses of the city's grandeur, imposing mosques, Byzantine churches, and ancient ruins, but they seem to be leading you away from these landmarks, into a labyrinthine world that only reveals itself in snatches. As you navigate this maze, you begin to notice subtle changes in the boys' demeanor. Their footsteps slow, their eyes darting back over their shoulders as if checking for unseen observers. You wonder who or what might be following them, but whenever you try to glance behind, there's nothing. Only the empty streets and the eerie silence that hangs like a curtain between buildings. The air grows thick with an almost palpable sense of unease, and you start to feel a creeping sense of dread as the boys lead you deeper into the city. They seem to be heading for some hidden destination, one that exists beyond the reach of the Imperial authorities or even the watchful eyes of the people who dwell in these narrow streets. Suddenly, the buildings around you give way to a sprawling complex, crumbling walls, vaulted ceilings, and an entrance guarded by two imposing stone lions. The boys quicken their pace as they approach this threshold, and for a moment, it seems like the very fabric of reality is about to tear apart at its seams. You feel a jolt run through your entire being as you pass beneath the shadowy archway. Inside lies an almost forgotten world, narrow corridors lined with frescoes depicting distant lands, storied lives, and battles long past. The air inside reeks of dust, old parchment, and something faintly medicinal. You catch glimpses of rows upon rows of ancient texts stacked haphazardly on wooden shelves, the letters etched into their covers seeming to whisper secrets in a language you don't understand. A figure emerges from the shadows, an elderly man with sunken eyes that seem to bore into your very soul as he greets each boy by name. He's dressed in worn finery, his white beard streaked with threads of gray and gold, and carries himself with an air of quiet authority. The boys fall silent at his approach, their shoulders squared in a subtle display of respect. "You are the ones from the east," he states without inflection as he leads them to a small chamber tucked away in the heart of this labyrinthine complex. "Those who have walked farthest under the burning sun." He pauses for an instant before continuing. "In this place you will find stories not just of empires risen and fallen, but also those left untold. Whispers from forgotten corners that defy explanation or hold hidden truths waiting to be unearthed. Your eyes are keen, your ears listen closely for threads that weave in the dark." As he speaks, his voice drops to a hushed whisper that seems almost audible only within this room's confines. "In Constantinople, there is more than meets the eye, secrets locked behind doors of worn stone and gates guarded by unseen presences. Some tales are told, others remain hidden beneath layers upon layers of forgotten lore." With these enigmatic words hanging in the air like mist evaporating at dawn, the boys' eyes seem to lock onto some invisible point beyond their own sight. You sense that they have arrived somewhere not just physical but also within themselves, a place where truth and myth blur into an otherworldly tapestry. The elderly man bows his head slightly, as if acknowledging something only he can see. "You are among the chosen few who will carry these stories forward, out of this quiet room filled with shadows and stories." The weight is great, the burden heavy. And in that moment, you realize that your own path has been intertwined with theirs all along, a journey through Constantinople's hidden heart, where tales whisper secrets to those brave enough to listen. The darkness seems to close around you like an embracing shroud as you step forward into this labyrinth of forgotten lore. The air clings to your skin like a damp shroud as you make your way through the narrow streets of Constantinople's oldest quarter. The scent of fresh bread wafts from the nearby bakery, mingling with the smell of roasting meats and spices that hangs heavy over the stalls lining the cobblestone road. You navigate between vendors selling their wares, colorful fabrics, intricately patterned carpets, and delicate trinkets, as they call out to potential customers in a cacophony of voices. Some shout prices, while others tout the virtues of their goods with an air of exaggerated conviction that's almost endearing. The sun beats down on your head, casting dappled shadows across the pavement as you continue through the winding streets. Every few steps, you pass beneath the arches of a grand imperial building or the vaulted entrance to some forgotten courtyard. You can't help but feel like an ant scurrying along the edges of a behemoth's domain. You pause for a moment at the corner of two intersecting roads, surveying the chaotic scene before you. The cacophony is almost overwhelming, donkeys braying, merchants hawking their wares, and the distant clang of hammer on anvil from some nearby forge all combine to create a maddening din. As you stand there, a small boy darts past your elbow, chasing after his errant ball with a look of focused determination. You watch him go for a moment before turning back to face the vendors once more. A particularly pungent smell catches your attention. Someone nearby is cooking up a batch of sweet pastry dough. You wander over to investigate and find yourself surrounded by an assortment of pastries, from delicate honey cakes to thick slices of walnut-studded bread. The vendor offers you a warm smile as he wraps a small package containing one of his latest creations for the day's market. A tiny, intricately decorated pie made with layers of flaky dough and filled with a sweet mixture of apples and spices. You take a bite and discover that the pastry is still slightly warm from its trip in the oven. The combination of flavors on your tongue, rich, buttery goodness mingling with the sweetness of sugar and the tartness of apple, is almost overwhelming, like an explosion of delight in your mouth. For a moment, everything else fades away as you focus solely on this singular pleasure. However, it's not long before reality intrudes once more. The vendor hands you another pastry for your consideration while pointing out some particularly fine examples of his work on display nearby, elaborately decorated tarts with intricate designs made from sugar and colored dough. You notice a few passers-by eyeing the offerings with interest, but most seem intent on their own affairs. One woman stands a little ways down the street, her eyes fixed intently on some point ahead as she navigates through the throng of people. She looks tired, her shoulders slumped forward in exhaustion and her movements slow and deliberate. You wonder what might be weighing on her mind as you continue to browse the offerings before you. The sun casts long shadows across the road now, illuminating a nearby doorway where an elderly couple sits together in quiet repose. The woman's eyes are closed, but she stirs occasionally as if sensing some unseen presence watching over her. Her companion holds her hand gently, his own eyes fixed on some distant point that lies beyond their little clearing. As you pause to observe this tranquil scene, A faint breeze stirs the nearby awnings and rustles through the fabric of your clothes. You feel it pass across your skin like a whispered secret, carrying with it scents from the surrounding streets, spices from the spice market, incense wafting up from some hidden temple, and just beneath those, something almost imperceptible. Your eyes flicker towards an old stone building to one side of the street. The sign above its entrance is cracked and worn but still legible. It reads Benedicta's Bread in faded letters that seem to blend seamlessly into their surroundings. You wonder how long this place has stood here, serving the people of Constantinople with fresh bread morning after morning. A group nearby begins singing one of the city's traditional tavern songs, a lively tune filled with raucous energy and playful insults directed at various parts of the male anatomy. The song is so familiar that you find yourself tapping your foot in time as it plays on, carried by its catchy melody through the crowded streets like an unstoppable force. Eventually, the music fades away into the distance, one final flourish before being lost beneath the din of everyday life once more. As silence falls over the street, a faint rustling can be heard from within Benedicta's bread itself, someone stirring dough in preparation for tomorrow's baking cycle. The sounds and smells of the street blend together seamlessly as you continue through this vibrant tapestry, an intricate weave that incorporates every texture and sensation at its disposal. Every step carries with it new experiences, observations, or sensations to be savored and absorbed by your senses. The roughness of stone beneath your feet, the crunch of pastry giving way in your mouth. Time itself becomes fluid as you wander through this bustling quarter, a place where past, present, and future blend into an almost indistinguishable haze. Events blend together with one another like pieces within some sprawling mosaic that's constantly evolving before your very eyes. Vendors hawking their wares, children chasing each other through the narrow alleys, and the constant hum of everyday life providing a comforting background against which every individual experience plays out. The scent of fresh bread lingers on in the air as you continue deeper into this labyrinthine city, an unseen thread weaving its way through everything else. As you wander through these narrow alleys, the scent of fresh bread wafts up to greet you once again, carrying with it memories of countless mornings spent huddled in a small cafe, sipping coffee and listening to the vendors' lively debates about politics and philosophy. The air is alive with the hum of everyday life, merchants calling out their wares, the clanging of pots from kitchens above, and the soft murmur of prayers from the nearby mosques. You turn a corner into a wider street, lined on either side by tall wooden shutters adorned with intricate carvings of leaves and flowers. The sun casts long shadows across the cobblestones as you make your way towards the famous Hippodrome, that magnificent arena where emperors once held their grand spectacles in honor of Zeus. As you walk, the buildings seem to grow taller, their facades a testament to the city's storied past. You pause for a moment at the entrance of a small church, its stone pillars worn smooth by centuries of touch and gaze. The doors are slightly ajar, inviting you into a world of silence and contemplation. Inside, candles flicker like fireflies in the dim light, casting eerie shadows on the vaulted ceiling as you move deeper into the nave. You can almost hear the whispers of ancient prayers rising up to mingle with the scent of old incense, that pungent aroma that speaks of forgotten rituals and mysteries yet unknown. As you reach out a hand to touch the worn stone of an altar, your mind begins to wander back through time. Memories begin to unfold like petals on a flower, each one a testament to the countless moments when faith has been woven into the fabric of life in this city. The air thickens with anticipation as you recall the days of Constantine's reign, the Roman emperor who once saw visions of a new Rome, built not just upon earthly foundations, but also on the rock-solid promises of Christianity. His dream was to create a city where East and West would converge, their diverse traditions blending into something greater than either could ever be alone. In those early days, Constantinople's streets were awash with an air of hope, as if every individual experience held within it the promise of transcendence, for in this new Rome, faith had become indistinguishable from everyday life. You remember walking through the city on a winter morning, when snowflakes fell gently onto the cobblestones like tiny diamonds, scattered by some benevolent god. The memory lingers long after you've emerged into the bright sunlight again, and with it comes another fragment of verse, one that has haunted your dreams for years. The moon casts shadows where no man treads, and darkness falls upon all earthly deeds. It's a forgotten poem from an even more ancient time, when Constantinople was little more than a fledgling city on the Bosphorus. Yet its haunting words evoke memories of those long-forgotten nights spent huddled in small groups around flickering candles, exchanging whispered stories and half-remembered rhymes. You can almost feel the weight of history bearing down upon you as you continue deeper into this labyrinthine city, with every step revealing new fragments of a narrative that spans centuries. The scent of charred wood and cooking oil wafts through the narrow alleys, a familiar aroma that signals the approach of evening in Constantinople's market district. The smell clings to your clothes like a damp shroud, a reminder of last night's fires that still crackle in the city's hearths. You navigate through the crowded streets with a practiced ease, dodging merchants hawking their wares and children chasing after stray chickens. Every so often, you catch sight of a vendor's stall, its wooden frame weathered to a silvery gray from years of exposure to saltwater air and Mediterranean sunlight. The smells wafting from these stalls are as varied as the city itself. Pungent spices from Syria, the sweet tang of fresh oranges from Greece, and the rich aroma of roasted meats that sizzle in giant cauldrons. You stop at a small bakery tucked away on a side street, its sign bearing an image of St. John Chrysostom himself. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of freshly baked bread, dense loaves made from coarse wheat flour and water drawn from the city's ancient aqueducts. The baker, a stout man named Georgios, greets you warmly as he continues to shape dough into neat oblongs. Today's special, he says, holding up a golden brown loaf, is fresh bread with herbs, rosemary from Cretan thyme from the hills of Asia Minor. He hands it over for a few copper coins, which clink against your palm as you take the warm loaf. The weight is comforting in your arms, like carrying a small child. You wander back into the evening light, where shadows stretch across cobblestones and lamp posts, cast long fingers of illumination. People pass by with baskets slung over their shoulders or tucked under their arms, some bearing fresh produce from the nearby hippodrome gardens, others carrying goods from far-off provinces like Egypt or India. The sounds of vendors hawking their wares blend into a constant hum, merchants calling out prices and shoppers responding with counteroffers. Every few paces you catch sight of a mosaic, fragments of ancient artistry embedded in church walls or adorning palace facades. These mosaics depict scenes from the life of Christ, as well as mythological creatures like griffins and lions that seem to leap off their stone pedestals into your imagination. You feel the smooth surface beneath your fingertips as you brush against a wall, tracing intricate patterns with the pads of your fingers. In one corner of the market square stands an ancient temple dedicated to the goddess Isis, its columns crumbling but still radiating an aura of forgotten grandeur. The air around it is thick with dust, and the scent of old incense sticks wafting from nearby shrines. Locals avoid this area, claiming that ghosts linger here long after sunset. Instead, you head towards a smaller temple adjacent to the Hippodrome Gardens, one dedicated to the god Serapis, an Egyptian deity imported centuries ago by Emperor Theodosius himself. Inside, cypress candles cast flickering shadows on stone walls, adorned with faded frescoes of Nilotic deities and great rivers that flow from their temples like lifeblood. You pass through rows of pillars supporting a vaulted ceiling, each pillar bearing the name of an emperor or some noble patron who contributed to its construction. Some of these names are almost illegible, worn away by time like sandstone weathering in the desert. You pause before one such inscription, donated by Emperor Justinian I. May his name be blessed. The cypress scent is intense here, a pungent reminder that Serapis was once revered for healing and fertility. Later, as evening gives way to twilight, you find yourself back at your lodgings near the Golden Horn, one of many rooms shared with other travelers in a dilapidated but well-maintained mansion. The sounds from outside grow muffled here. Distant laughter carries on the breeze, while closer by a group of locals argue over politics or religion beneath your window. Inside your room, you shed your outer garments and sink onto a narrow bed made up of straw pallets with wool blankets, its softness an unexpected comfort after hours spent in crowded streets. The weight of exhaustion settles into your shoulders as night air seeps through gaps between the shutters, carrying whispers from beyond the city's walls. You can feel it now, the faint hum of distant trade and commerce that never ceases, the creaking wooden signs above taverns advertising wine and ale for weary travelers, the sounds of chanting priests and wailing mourners echoing off church spires in the darkness. It is a symphony you've grown accustomed to, one that blends seamlessly with your own heartbeat, reminding you that in this city of countless faces and forgotten names, there lies an eerie sense of continuity. As night deepens, you surrender yourself to its rhythm, lying back on your straw pallets as darkness presses against the shutters, feeling the cool breeze raise gooseflesh across your arms, letting out a sigh that merges with those outside, creating in this moment a strange harmony between your own weariness and the eternal pulse of Constantinople itself. As you settle into your pallets, the creaking of the wooden floorboards beneath your weight is like a lullaby to the city outside. The shutters, though closed against the night, seem to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, as if the very walls are alive and humming in harmony with the hushed whispers that drift through the streets. In this twilight realm, where day and night blur into each other like watercolors on wet paper, you find yourself suspended between worlds. Your eyelids grow heavy, weighed down by the relentless fatigue of a life lived in the shadow of history's grand canvas. Yet even as your mind begins to surrender to the darkness, memories refuse to be silenced. The Great Fire still lingers, a ghostly presence that haunts the city like an unquiet spirit. It has been years since the flames consumed much of Constantinople, but its memory remains etched in every stone, every wooden beam, and every whispered rumor. How could it not? The fire's aftermath was a time of upheaval, when empires collided and allegiances were forged in blood. Your thoughts wander to that fateful night, as if the shadows themselves are conjuring images from the past. You recall the terror etched on your mother's face, her eyes wide with fear as she clutched you tight, trying to shield you from the inferno's roar. The city was a maelstrom of panic and confusion, people rushing to escape the flames, others fighting to save what little they could. And yet, it has been years since that terrible night. Years in which life somehow managed to reclaim its rhythm within these ancient walls. Merchants rebuilt their stalls, artisans restored their workshops, and families settled back into routines worn smooth by familiarity. But amidst this resilience, a curious thing occurred. The Great Fire became a distant memory. Faded frescoes on church facades now depicted scenes of redemption rather than devastation. The city's chroniclers wrote about it in hushed tones, as if its significance had been reduced to mere myth. Even your own family, once so close-knit and tight-lipped about their experiences during the fire, began to speak in whispers or not at all. This forgetting was a slow process, one that seemed almost natural, as if the city itself was working against remembrance, erasing the scars of its past with each passing year. It's as if Constantinople has learned to forgive herself for her own transgressions, and in doing so convinced everyone else to do the same. Your mind struggles to reconcile this notion with your own memories of that fateful night. But try as you might, the recollections seem hazy, as if they were forged from a dream rather than actual events. The fire's impact has been distilled into an eerie silence, one in which the city seems to be collectively holding its breath, afraid to confront the truth about what happened. In this liminal state, where past and present blur like watercolors on wet paper, you find yourself lost within your own memories. Your gaze drifts toward the shutters, as if hoping for some hidden message or secret that will unlock the mysteries of the Great Fire's aftermath. But there is only darkness dark enough to hide secrets, yet not so black it cannot reflect a glimmer from the moon above. As you settle into your pallet once more, an unsettling sense creeps over you. Have the memories I've tried to hold onto been nothing but a ruse? A clever conjuring of the city's collective psyche to keep its true nature hidden beneath layers of myth and legend. Your eyelids grow heavier still, weighed down by doubts that threaten to consume your very existence. What is it about this city, this Rome that never fell, that drives us all to forget our greatest pain? The scent of simmering oil wafts up from the kitchen, carrying with it memories of lazy Sundays past. The aroma is faintly sweet, like a promise of comfort to come. You are sitting in the dimly lit courtyard of a modest imperial villa, surrounded by the soft chirping of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl outside the walls. The air is heavy with the scent of cooking oil and something else, perhaps herbs or spices. It's impossible to tell at this distance. As you wait for the meal to be served, your thoughts wander back to last night's dinner conversation. Your hostess, a kind-hearted woman named Euphrosyne, had been discussing her concerns about the growing popularity of new cooking methods from the East, allegedly using sugar and spices in ways that would make even the most seasoned chefs blush. You recall leaning over to whisper your own reservations to someone at your elbow, only to realize it was not a friend but one of Euphrosyne's servants. He gave you an almost imperceptible nod before returning his attention to stirring the sauce on the stove. As you ponder what might be wrong with this newfangled approach to cooking, surely there's nothing quite like the old ways. Your stomach growls in anticipation. You've been looking forward to dinner all day, and now that it's finally within reach. A soft voice interrupts your reverie. Your meal is ready. It comes from one of Euphrosyne's daughters, a shy but sweet girl with a fondness for overzealous bowing. As you stand up to join the others at table, the wooden chair creaks beneath you. The sound echoes off the stone walls, and for an instant you're reminded that even in these opulent surroundings, impermanence lurks around every corner, whether it's a loose floorboard or a delicate vase perched precariously on a shelf. Tonight's meal is simple yet satisfying. Roasted chicken with olives and capers served alongside a side of steaming greens. The flavors are familiar but well balanced, the textures interesting without being overwhelming. For once, you find yourself enjoying your food rather than merely eating it to sustain yourself for the day ahead. The company at table is similarly low-key, just Euphrosyne and her family, plus a few close friends who have stopped by on their way through town. Conversation flows easily enough, but everyone seems content to focus more on the meal itself than any grand topics of discussion. A glance around the courtyard shows you that this evening's gathering has attracted its usual assortment of critters: scurrying insects seeking scraps, a scruffy tomcat with an eye for leftover meat, and perhaps one or two stray birds caught off guard by the sudden appearance of food. It is, after all, what these streets are like, full of makeshift meals being scavenged from underfoot. Despite this atmosphere of quiet contentment, your mind keeps drifting back to Euphrosyne's words last night about her concerns over new cooking methods spreading across the empire. Can it really be true that those Eastern cooks would stoop so low as to use something called sugar, an abomination in its own right? And what exactly is a spice blend? One of Euphrosyne's sons piped up with just such a question, only to have his mother quickly hush him before he embarrassed himself further. As you sip your wine and continue the evening's relaxed pace, memories begin surfacing. You recall strolling through markets in search of spices, trying out this one vendor or that for their latest concoctions, discovering hidden gems tucked away between more mundane stalls selling everyday goods like olive oil and cloth. What is it about these fragrances so unlike anything found back home? They have a way of conjuring emotions long buried beneath the surface. You are now lounging on a nearby divan, half snoozed but still vaguely aware of your surroundings, particularly Euphrosyne's gentle humming as she clears away last night's dishes. A stray ray from the setting sun casts an intricate pattern across her hands and arms, sending tiny shivers through you. The courtyard air cools slightly with each passing minute. A new breeze stirs up dust particles on nearby shelves, carrying with it whispers of memories past, or perhaps not even that. Sometimes, in moments like these when your guard is down, the line between what truly happened and what merely seems to have happened blurs. One particular recollection surfaces, attending an imperial dinner party a few months ago. Your host, Emperor Justinian himself, had welcomed guests from across the empire, all eager participants in his grand vision for a unified, stronger Roman state. It was during one of those interludes between courses that conversation turned to stories about favorite childhood memories. As I sat amidst the lavish splendor of the imperial court, my gaze drifted across the table to where Emperor Justinian was engaged in a lively discussion with his esteemed guests. The evening air was alive with the murmur of conversation and the clinking of fine crystal as they sipped their wine. My thoughts, however, were elsewhere, lost in the memories that had been stirred by our earlier conversation. I recalled the time when I was but a young boy, growing up on the outskirts of Constantinople. Our family's modest dwelling was nestled near the shores of the Golden Horn, and I would often sneak away from my chores to watch the ships come and go, their cargo holds filled with exotic goods from far-flung lands. The sea air carried the scent of spices and the calls of merchants hawking their wares, a symphony that still echoes in my mind. My eyes began to wander further back, tracing the memories like threads on a tapestry. I remembered the summer days spent exploring the great palace's hidden courtyards with my siblings, chasing after the palace cats as they chased after the fluttering curtains of the imperial apartments. The sound of laughter and play still resonated within me. As if sensing my distraction, Emperor Justinian beckoned me to rejoin our conversation. "Ah, young scholar," he said with a warm smile, his eyes twinkling behind the folds of his beard, "we've been discussing the merits of imperial patronage in fostering artistic innovation. Tell us, what are your thoughts on this matter?" I hesitated for an instant, feeling out of my depth among such esteemed company, but then I took a deep breath and launched into my response, offering opinions garnered from countless hours spent poring over dusty tomes and listening to the whispers of scholars in hushed corridors. The evening wore on, with each course served as expertly as the conversations that accompanied it. As we lingered over sweet pastries and strong coffee, I found myself caught up in a lively debate about the merits of classical versus Byzantine art forms, a discussion that led to heated exchanges between Emperor Justinian's advisors. It was during one of these moments of heightened passion that I noticed an unusual movement at the emperor's side. He had reached beneath his robes and produced a small, leather-bound journal from within his belt pouch. A subtle flick of his wrist sent it skimming across the tablecloth to come to rest near my elbow. As if on instinct, I picked up the book, running my fingers over its worn cover in a gesture both familiar and intimate, as though I had been holding this very object countless times before. The words "Journal of His Imperial Majesty Justinian" were etched into the leather in elegant calligraphy. My eyes widened as I opened the journal to find pages filled with handwritten notes, diagrams, and sketches. But what caught my attention was a single entry, written in an ink that seemed almost imperceptible at first glance, but grew more vibrant as I gazed deeper into its curves. "The one who holds this book shall possess knowledge beyond his years." Suddenly, the evening's conversation receded from importance, supplanted by the realization that Emperor Justinian had been holding a secret, one so carefully guarded that even his closest advisors might not be aware of it. And now, inexplicably, I was privy to its existence. I felt a shiver run down my spine as our host's gaze locked onto mine, the Emperor's eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity in the candlelight. "Tell me," he said softly, his voice taking on a new tone that sent ripples of trepidation through the gathering, "what do you think this passage means?" In that moment, I was acutely aware that my life, and perhaps even the course of history itself, hung precariously in balance. The whispered words echoing within me seemed to reverberate with an eerie familiarity. The one who holds this book. The scent of old parchment wafts through my nostrils as I rest my elbows on a wooden desk, cradling the worn leather book in my hands. The whispered words echoing within me seem to reverberate with an eerie familiarity. The one who holds this book. My eyes wander around the dimly lit room, taking in the faint scent of beeswax and the soft glow of candles casting shadows on the walls. The air is thick with the smell of old books and dust. I've been poring over these yellowed pages for what feels like hours, trying to decipher the cryptic messages hidden within. My fingers run across the embossed cover, tracing the intricate patterns that dance around the edges. The weight of the book in my hands is reassuring, a tangible connection to the past. The sound of footsteps echoes from outside the room, growing louder as they approach. I glance up just as a young scribe pushes open the door, carrying a tray laden with steaming cups and plates. "Your tea, sir," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I smile at him, feeling a pang of gratitude for this small comfort in my research-induced haze. He sets down the tray beside me and takes up a position against the wall, watching as I take a sip from one of the cups. The warm liquid soothes my parched throat, and I feel a moment's peace wash over me. The tea is a blend of herbs that are supposed to aid in focus: chamomile, rose petals, and a hint of mint. It's said to help scholars like myself concentrate for hours on end without growing too restless or irritable. As I take another sip, I feel my mind begin to clear, the fog lifting from my thoughts. The scribe shifts his weight against the wall, breaking into my reverie. "Sir," he says softly, reminding me that our conversation isn't over yet. I smile at him and set down the cup, running a hand through my hair as if searching for something hidden there. "You know," I say to him, leaning forward slightly as he leans in closer, "I've been trying to understand what's being said here." I tap the cover of the book with my finger. But it all seems like such nonsense, codes within codes, and language that doesn't seem to match any dialect from around here. The scribe nods sympathetically, his eyes darting down at the pages in front of me before returning to mine. "It's said," he begins slowly, as if choosing each word carefully, "that some texts contain secrets hidden even deeper than others." My eyebrows rise, and I feel a spark of curiosity ignite within me. "The secrets," I press him gently. "Yes, sir." He leans in closer still, his voice barely above a whisper now. "Some texts are said to be mere veils for other truths, layers upon layers of meaning that require years of study just to begin unraveling." I lean back in my chair, steepling my fingers together as I ponder this claim. My mind is whirling with possibilities and questions about the nature of these secrets, how they might relate to our understanding of history, or what kind of individual could possibly decipher them. For a moment, we sit there in silence, surrounded by candles that cast flickering shadows on the walls. The scribe's eyes never leave mine as he waits for me to absorb this information, his expression attentive but guarded, like someone sharing a delicate secret they're not entirely sure is safe. The only sound comes from outside, distant chanting of prayers drifting through open windows, or perhaps just the soft creaking of wooden beams settling into place. My thoughts begin to wander down paths both dark and winding, but my mind stays anchored in this moment, with this scribe's words echoing within me like a whispered promise. Eventually, I break the silence by taking another sip from my cup, feeling the warmth spread through my hands as I hold it up. I see, I say finally, trying to sound convincing despite the uncertainty churning inside me. The scribe nods, seemingly satisfied that he's shared what he had to share for now. With nothing more on his mind, he gathers his tray and slips out of the room quietly, leaving behind an unsettling sense of calmness as the silence envelops us once again. My eyes wander back down at the pages in my hands, where a single line catches my attention. The walls shall be rebuilt with stronger stones. The phrase seems to leap off the page, echoing within me like that earlier message, the one who holds this book. I'm left pondering its meaning as the shadows on the wall appear to shift and grow longer, dark silhouettes of people moving through a crowded market square. As my mind wanders further into these mysteries, I become lost in thought. As my mind wanders further into these mysteries, I become lost in thought. The shadows on the wall seem to grow longer and darker, as if they're pulling me down a rabbit hole of forgotten memories. I try to shake off the feeling, but it's like trying to hold onto sand. No matter how hard I grasp, it slips right through my fingers. I'm sitting cross-legged on the cold stone floor of our little workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects and scattered tools. The air is thick with the smell of freshly cut wood and oil paint. My father's hands move deftly as he works on a beautiful wooden box, his eyes focused intently on the intricate patterns unfolding before him. I glance over at my brother, Idris, who's sprawled out on a nearby cushion, nose buried in a book. He looks up, catches my eye, and raises an eyebrow, still lost in thought. He mouths silently. I nod, feeling a bit self-conscious about the strange sensation that's been building inside me all morning. As if sensing my distraction, Father sets down his tools and says, "Ahmed, come help me with this." He gestures to a half-finished table leg lying on its side nearby. We work together in silence for a few minutes. I'm running sandpaper over the wood's smooth surface while he carefully applies a coat of varnish. As we work, my mind keeps drifting back to that message, the one who holds this book. Who is it? Why does it feel so connected to this life, this city, these people? The workshop door creaks open and our neighbor, Rashid the calligrapher, walks in. He's carrying a large bundle of papers wrapped in leather straps. His eyes light up when he spots me working on the table leg. Ahmed, I've brought my latest commission. It's for the Imperial Palace. He unrolls his precious scrolls and begins to set them out with great care on our work table. I was hoping you might be able to help me with some of the gold filigree. Father sets down his tools once more, this time to examine Rashid's latest project. Idris stirs from his book, interested in seeing what all the fuss is about. As we chat and work together on Rashid's commission, my mind begins to untangle itself from its earlier threads of thought. But just as it seems like everything will go back to normal, a faint sound drifts into our workshop, the distant chime of hammering on metal. It grows louder with each passing moment, until I realize that something is definitely amiss outside. The noise sounds different. It's not quite the rhythmic pounding we're used to from the blacksmith down the street. This has a strange cadence, almost like Idris, I whisper urgently as I set aside Rashid's commission and rise from my crouched position beside him. Do you hear that? My brother looks up, concern etched on his face. What is it? He mouths back. And just then, the workshop door swings open once more. This time it's one of our apprentices, Yusef, who appears with a look of wide-eyed wonder on his young face. Hold everything, he stammers, as if having trouble finding the right words. I've seen the city is changing. Rashid sets down his scrolls and approaches us cautiously. Father puts aside his tools once more, curiosity etched on his features. What do you mean? Idris asks firmly, but Yusef only shakes his head. I'll show you, he says finally, gesturing for all of us to follow him outside into the bright sunlight. As we step out onto the cobblestones, my eyes widen in shock at what's unfolding before me. The city is indeed changing, and it looks like nothing I've ever seen before. The scent of old parchment wafts through the air as you settle into the worn cushions of the palace's library. The soft glow of lanterns flickers on the shelves, casting shadows that seem to dance across the pages of ancient texts. You've spent hours poring over dusty scrolls and crumbling manuscripts, searching for a glimpse of what lies beyond the familiar streets of Constantinople. The city is indeed changing, and it looks like nothing you've ever seen before. Buildings rise from the earth with alarming speed, their stone facades glinting in the sunlight as they stretch towards the heavens. The sound of hammers ringing out against metal echoes through the air, mingling with the chatter of merchants and traders on the city's bustling thoroughfares. You set aside your current task, a painstaking transcription of an ancient scroll, to take a short respite from the dimly lit library. The softness of the cushions envelops you as you lean back into their worn depths, allowing yourself to drift on the gentle breeze that stirs through the room. Outside, the sun begins its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the city's rooftops. Your gaze wanders to a nearby shelf, where a collection of rare and valuable texts seems almost out of place amidst the more mundane offerings of the palace library. Among them lies an unassuming tome bound in worn leather. Its title, etched in gold lettering, reads Secretum Imperii. The weight of this book is unmistakable. It feels heavy with secrets. You recall a whispered rumor from one of the palace's older scribes that hidden deep within the imperial palace lay a secret chamber, sealed away for reasons known only to the emperor. Some said it held ancient relics and artifacts beyond comprehension. Others claimed it was home to forbidden knowledge, left untouched since the days of Constantine himself. Your curiosity gets the better of you. You carefully set aside your transcription work and rise from your seat, making a mental note to speak with one of the palace's more seasoned scribes about the mystery. The faint scent of old parchment still clings to your fingers as you walk towards the door, a reminder that even in this most tranquil of settings, secrets lurk just beneath the surface. As you emerge from the library into the fading light of day, the city stretches out before you like an endless tapestry. You breathe in deeply, taking in the heady aroma of spices and incense carried on the breeze, a scent that clings to every corner of this vibrant metropolis. The sounds of laughter and music drift through the air from nearby taverns and market stalls. Even as the sun dips lower towards the horizon, Constantinople shows no signs of slowing its pace. With each step you take outside into the city's streets, the silence within the library seems to recede, replaced by an ever-present din that echoes off every surface. You weave your way through narrow alleys and crowded marketplaces, careful not to get caught up in any one conversation or transaction as you make your way towards the palace. Eventually, after navigating a maze of corridors and passageways within the imposing walls of the Imperial residence, you arrive at the entrance to what is said to be the secret chamber. A small inscription above the door reads, Addidus Tenebrarum, Gateway to Darkness. A faint hum emanates from the far end of the corridor as a single torch flickers on its wall mount. It casts eerie shadows across your face, making you pause for an instant before pushing open the heavy wooden portal that guards this most enigmatic space. The air inside is stale and unmoving, almost palpably dense. Your footsteps echo through the narrow chamber as you step further into its depths. A faint scent of smoke lingers on every surface. Old candles have left a residue that seems to cling even after their extinguishing. Walls covered in frescoes depicting distant landscapes seem out of place amidst this dimly lit space, yet they only serve to heighten your sense of disorientation. In the center of the room, an ornate pedestal bears weight upon its surface, an intricately carved box bound with gold filigree and gemstones that glint like unpolished rubies. It appears untouched for centuries. Dust accumulates around it in a fine layer that rustles softly as you breathe nearby. You reach out to touch the lid of this mysterious receptacle, only to freeze, caught between curiosity's siren call and an inexplicable feeling of trepidation. There is something unsettling about disturbing the silence within these walls, almost as if, by touching the box or opening its lid, you would shatter a fragile equilibrium. In the stillness that follows your hesitation, your ears pick up on a faint rustling noise, soft at first but growing louder with each passing moment. Footsteps approach from beyond the chamber's entrance. Heavy and deliberate, their cadence suggests they are those of someone who knows this place all too well. A figure emerges into view, aged to perfection, graying hair worn in a neat coif that frames his weary face. He carries an ornate staff adorned with small gemstones, which glints faintly as he approaches the pedestal. His eyes lock onto you for but an instant before returning their gaze to the box, and when they do, something like disappointment flickers across his features. I had thought no one would venture here today, he says in a voice that carries just above a whisper, or at least not until the hour of twilight. His words hang suspended between you as an expectant silence falls upon the room. The expectant silence hangs heavy in the air like a palpable mist, as if time itself has slowed to a crawl within this forgotten room. You find yourself caught up in its stillness, suspended between curiosity and unease. The old man's words linger on your lips, his whisper barely audible yet seeming to reverberate deep within your chest. It is then that he breaks the silence, his eyes never leaving yours as he takes a step closer, his movements deliberate and unhurried. You see, he continues in the same hushed tone, this place holds secrets best left unspoken. Things hidden away for centuries, waiting to be forgotten. As he speaks, his gaze drifts around the room, taking in every detail as if searching for something more than just memories etched into these ancient walls. His eyes linger on a section of wall adorned with intricate carvings that seem out of place among the simpler architectural elements. The old man's attention is drawn to this section like an artist to his masterpiece. The Sultan himself had it built, he says, his voice barely above a whisper now, though I doubt even his most trusted advisors knew what lay within its depths. He pauses before you, studying your reaction intently, as if trying to gauge whether the weight of these secrets is about to become too much for you to bear. The air thickens with anticipation. Every breath seems heavy, weighed down by the unspoken questions hanging between you. As he speaks, his hand drifts towards a small section of stone that blends seamlessly into the wall's design. It's almost imperceptible unless one knows where to look, a tiny crack in an otherwise flawless facade. The old man's fingers dance across this spot before landing on a hidden catch that clicks softly beneath their touch. With a gentle creaking sound, a portion of the wall slides open, revealing a narrow stairway leading down into darkness. A faint scent wafts up, musty and old, but with an undertone of something else. Spices, perhaps, or incense from a distant era. The air carries hints of secrets long buried. He gestures towards the stairs without taking your hand, his eyes gleaming in the dim light as if daring you to descend into the unknown depths below. Would you like to see what lies beneath? He asks quietly, his voice not asking permission but offering an invitation that seems both tantalizing and treacherous. The choice is yours now, a decision made with nothing more than instinct as the weight of history hangs suspended above you, urging caution yet beckoning forward into mystery. You feel your heart pounding in anticipation, even as fear begins to seep into every pore like cold water on a winter's night. Without hesitation or deliberation, without giving yourself time for second thoughts or fears about what lies below, you nod towards the stairs. The old man smiles then, a small smile that holds a wealth of understanding and perhaps even approval. With his hand beckoning you forward once more, he leads down into darkness, leaving behind the fading light of day above to plunge into secrets hidden away beneath the palace's foundation stones for centuries. The musty scent of aged stone wafts up from beneath your feet as you descend into the darkness, following closely behind the lantern-bearer's slow-moving form. The air grows thick with the smell of damp earth and forgotten histories, a tang that clings to every surface like a lingering memory. As you walk, the sound of dripping water echoes through the narrow passageways, its rhythmic beat a soothing accompaniment to your footsteps. Your guide, a hooded figure whose face remains shrouded in shadows, leads you deeper into the heart of the palace's subterranean passages. The stone beneath your feet is cool and damp, worn smooth by countless generations of footsteps. Ahead, you see glints of flickering candlelight dancing across the walls, casting eerie shadows on the stone. As you continue down the winding passageway, the air begins to shift around you, growing warmer and heavier with the scent of cooking oil and roasting meats. Your stomach growls in anticipation as you catch sight of a small kitchen nestled within one of the palace's hidden recesses. Smoke drifts lazily from a brazier suspended over an open fire, filling the space with the savory aroma of slow-cooked stews. Inside the kitchen, a pair of cooks busily stir and tend to steaming pots, their movements economical and practiced as they work to prepare dinner for the palace's inhabitants. One cook, his bushy beard flecked with streaks of red, glances up at you from beneath the brim of his cap, his eyes squinting slightly against the flickering light. The hooded guide leads you closer to the kitchen, pausing as he gestures towards a nearby alcove where a large stone vase stands, its surface adorned with intricate carvings and hieroglyphs. Here, your guide says in low tones, is one of the palace's most prized possessions, an ancient vase crafted by the skilled hands of Emperor Justinian himself. The vase is heavy, weighing down on you as you reach out to touch its smooth surface. As your fingers make contact with the cool stone, a small inscription etched into its base catches your eye. For the glory of God and Rome, it reads. Your guide's eyes flicker towards yours, his expression unreadable behind his veil. Moving away from the vase, you notice the cook stirring one of the pots has paused in mid-motion, his spoon hovering above the bubbling stew as he gazes curiously at your interest in the inscription. He nods once, almost imperceptibly, before returning to his work with a quiet clatter of metal on clay. The sound of sizzling meat carries through the passageway as you step back into the cool darkness beyond the kitchen's warm glow. Shadows seem to writhe and twist around you like living things, their forms softened by the flickering candlelight ahead. A faint echo of muffled laughter drifts down from above, a solitary sound that shatters the stillness, its edges fraying as it dissipates into silence once more. You pause for an instant, your ears straining to catch any further hint of human presence in this labyrinthine space beneath the palace's foundation stones. The lantern-bearer's steady footsteps are a comforting contrast to the lingering uncertainty, reassuring you that even here, deep within the heart of Constantinople, there is still some semblance of civilization. Your eyes follow him as he moves ahead into the darkness, his light casting an eerie glow over ancient texts and crumbling scrolls scattered about on nearby shelves. As the passageway opens up before you once more, a sense of foreboding creeps in like a chill draft, leaving your skin prickling with unease. The shadows seem to grow longer, twisting into macabre shapes against the walls as the silence deepens around you. A stone pillar ahead stands sentinel-like, its surface etched with an inscription that glows eerily in the candlelight. Beware the hand of time. Your gaze lingers on this cryptic message for a moment before you push forward into the darkness beyond. Tonight you've traveled through the misty alleys of Constantinople's past, where the shadows danced with whispers of rebellion and forgotten lore. The distant fires that once lit up the night now flicker like embers in your mind, casting a warm glow on memories long buried beneath the tides of time. The bread that could give you a headache for days lingers as a gentle ache, reminding you of the impermanence of pleasure. The silent rebellion of the Imperial Scribes echoes through the corridors of history, their whispers still echoing off the stones. As we waded through these fragments of memory, we began to see the faint threads that connect them all, the resilience of human spirit in the face of turmoil, the way secrets are woven into the fabric of everyday life, and the quiet power of remembrance. It's a testament to the enduring nature of our experiences, how they can be both fragile as morning dew and resilient as the earth itself. If you'd like to keep exploring, you can gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from. As you drift toward sleep, allow these memories to sink below the surface of thought, their edges softening with each passing moment. The dark and quiet take over, enveloping you like a gentle shroud. Memories become mist once more, veiling themselves beneath the weight of time. And yet, in this vast expanse of forgotten things lies a beauty that remains unchanged, the patient earth, holding within its depths the stories of countless lives, waiting to be unearthed again with each passing season.